Hello, the time has come and I've finally shipped a new theme for Rails UI. This is the second Tailwind theme I'm calling Shepherd. And it's, I guess you'd call it a real estate inspired theme. So similar to something you'd see on Airbnb or something like that. So there's components that are involved that are related to like bookings and reservations and communication with people. So there's a lot involved in that, and it took a long time to get to where it is. But along the way in developing this theme, I wanted to do a video to talk about why I've come to this point where essentially in this update, I'm removing the dependency of Bootstrap CSS from the actual Rails UI ecosystem. So we are focused solely on Tailwind CSS from this point forward. Everyone that kind of chimed in with an opinion on that assumed, pretty much answered the question for me if we wanted to keep Bootstrap in the mix or keep Tailwind in it. And ultimately, Tailwind is the route. I think most developers are taking this day and age. It's a great framework. I love it. Personally, I use it every day. So it's like I was supporting Bootstrap for the sake of there are people, in that world that have to deal with Bootstrap every day. There's a lot of websites built with it. You know the look and feel when you see it, which is kind of my little critique of it. But at the same time, it supports a lot of websites. So I'm very thankful for the history and legacy Bootstrap has given us. And I don't know if Tailwind would exist without something like that, Ignore this crazy diff amount. If you're following along, it's mostly CSS changes and stuff, so ignore that. But this is my little pull request I have at the moment. It's on a branch, Rails UI. When you're seeing this, it'll probably be in the main branch. But I wanted to do a video to walk you through it, kind of see the new theme, and give you a few new features and enhancements along the way. So I'm actually going to run a new installation of Rails UI. I'm going to call this Shepherd since it's the name. And it's a vanilla Rails app when you first install the app. So I'm going to go Rails new Shepherd. It's going to install import maps for the assets initially, but Rails UI is going to actually remove that in favor of ES Build and Tailwind CSS on the front end. I updated the README to actually say don't actually install any kind of CSS flag when you run the installer on a new Rails app, because it's kind of conflicting when you do, and Rails UI doesn't know what you've actually typed at that point. So the best circumstances is, number one, you're using this with a brand new app, and two, you won't actually be targeting any of the front end when you're running a Rails new. Now, tests and other things like that, your framework for testing and all that, that's up to you. You can totally run that. This is more, Rails UI is pretty much the UI, so hence the name. So let's do Shepherd, and I'm actually going to pull from the repo for the gem, and we'll fetch from the actual branch for now. When you do this, if you're following along or wanting to try it out, definitely go from the main branch. So we'll say Rails UI, and we'll say GitHub, get Rails UI, and then Rails UI, and then I'll target the branch Shepherd. I mentioned in my written update that monetizing this thing, it's like a short blurb about it. Essentially, I don't have crazy immediate plans to do so. So the whole goal coming up will be getting more themes and components out the door. So I want this to be something developers actually want to use. And I think it's too early to monetize with that regard. So there's still decisions to be made around that, and I haven't gotten that far, and I don't think it's worth focusing my time on at this point, since we need to make some, product market fit decisions first. So that's kind of where this update's coming from. Tailwind's kind of the focus, which I think is the unanimous response from most people who've chimed in. And then there's a lot of bug fixes and stuff along the way. So I'm just ultimately simplifying things, making it easier to scale, and then ultimately bringing you more themes that are going to actually solve some problems for you. So got it installed. There are new dependencies in the install of the gem. It's a gem that is actually an engine that bolts to your app. So we'll actually run the Rails installer now. So we'll say Rails UI install. And it should do everything for the most part for you. There are a couple things we'll need to do post-install. That's pretty much a few clicks. And over that, essentially it's a very plug-and-play resource, which is the whole goal. If you're not design oriented, this is the whole point of me bringing this, as a resource to the community. I want you to be able to be enabled to do the things you need to do. So I'm on a brand new machine, so there's some chance this is kind of failing when we start things off. We'll see. With Rails UI installed, we can run bin dev and see if we can boot the server. We'll go to localhost 3000. And it did create some migrations when you load the app. I do use Devise by default, so you can have some pre-designed resource routes for Devise, which are like the sign up, sign in routes. There might come a point where I like allow you to choose what like resource name you use for that. Right now it's just user, which is pretty common. So we'll run this migration, hope all is well, and then you'll see the new launcher page with actual links to stuff. So the default Rails, I guess, start page is just a logo, and apparently you can click it. So this one's more stuff that you can click through. I think the OG Rails start page had a lot more links, so it's kind of funny that it's gotten worse. But opinions, I'll leave those aside. So the main thing you want to do, essentially, when you're first getting started, is configure your app. You can call it whatever you want here. Maybe I'll call it Shepherd just to be branded. And the town theme is already here. This one was what shipped with the original version. I had a previous Bootstrap version and then also a Tailwind version, so you could choose which framework. But now it's just Tailwind, so we've got two themes to choose from, which, if you followed along, is a step backwards, unfortunately. So my thought is maybe I'll bring that theme forward that was originally the Bootstrap theme, transition it to Tailwind. That might be my next task, and go from there. I'm undecided on that because I kind of want to, it's got a Bootstrap vibe, so I don't know if I want to like just try to recreate the Bootstrap look with Tailwind. It's kind of like contradictory, so I'm not sure. But maybe we can salvage it because that was a lot of work to build, and it's kind of daunting to say, oh, let's just throw it away. So that's yet to be decided, but we'll see what happens. So I'm going to install this. This is the first run, I'd say, as the installation goes. So once you do this, it will actually go fetch the independent theme assets, all the stuff that you're going to need to essentially use the theme, and components under the hood. And with this version, there is new color scheme selection. So these are actually color pickers. So if you want to check those off and change those, you totally can. They come with defaults. So when you do change your Rails UI config, you can actually do so from the config directory in your Rails UI config here. You see those presets already there. Now, I would recommend doing it mostly from the GUI, but that's just because that's where I tested it most. So up to you if you want to change them over here. It might be quicker to do it over here. But it should do like a find and replace with some Ruby foo under the hood that automatically updates your colors based on what you need. And I actually linked to a tool here where you can go generate an 11-tone shade based on what you need. Now that's going to come with some like, oh wow, ads. That's fun. It's going to come with some gotchas, I guess, because this scale isn't quite, along the lines of what Tailwind CSS kind of does, but it's pretty close, and it gets you started. Because this is daunting, I know, to want to go update 11 colors, but that's how I could really, enhance your app, and essentially you'll do it once and be done, so it's something to consider. So you could go preview the theme. Right now I host this on Cloudflare, and it's a static version, so the goal is to make this like one-on-one with what you're previewing locally in your own app, but it's very hard to translate from this straight to the Rails app sometimes, so there might be little, inconsistencies right now. But I'm trying to improve that with my process. But this is the static version. You can go check it out there. It's actually in the post that you'll see. You can link to it and preview it all. But essentially, there's like an admin section. There's also a marketing section of the site that's got a couple pages, like the pricing page. It's actually functioning as far as the toggle switch goes. Some FAQs, all that stuff. So, like I said, it's got an Airbnb kind of vibe. Nothing too wild, but also some cool stuff that I found would be useful to have in your own app. Like a dynamic sign-in page, sign-up page where it changes. All these fields would show, this is static, like I said, so if you're on Devise and you have OmniAuth enabled, maybe these would show up, but by default they won't. So that's something to take into account. The statics version is going to show you pretty much everything when you go to preview it here. If you want to, bundled with Rails UI, every theme is going to have custom pages that I've pre-built using the components in the system. And that system I'm referring to is called the design system. And if you go click up here in the menu, you'll find a full suite of stuff you can use. I've talked about this before, but if you're new to it, it's essentially a style guide to make use of. You can copy and paste these snippets based on what you need. I right now provide HTML, ERB, and Haml. There are other frameworks in my horizon that I'm considering. Flex seems to be pretty popular right now. Would be cool to add to that. A lot of people like View Component too. I don't know. It's hearsay. That's stuff I think will be on the horizon right now. My focus is getting more themes and components out the door. So that's stuff I feel like is more of a way you could take this and run with it into your components the way you want to build them and test them and all that. So typography, tables, everything under the hood, essentially of your basic repeatable elements. There are some things with this specific theme in particular where it's like data lists, where I have rows of data that are rich and have like image elements, clickable elements, select all, checkbox, stuff like that. I have the controllers here for the JavaScript, should you want to use that. Now, I will say the majority of the JavaScript you see in the app, as far as the components go, is going to ship with the theme. So you won't actually need to go create a file like this in your app. It's going to just be there. And forgive my misspelling there. Looks like I need to go through and tweak that a little bit. But yeah, essentially this will come just with it. So you won't need to do anything. You just need to snip it, essentially. Or if you go and install a page, like I just mentioned, that's going to be essentially built. So I'm going to install all of them just to show you what I mean. This kind of takes a while, but I'll show you the config updates automatically up here. If you want to check out the logs, you're probably going to get the best representation of what's going on to see the inserts and creates and stuff going on. That's all Ruby and Thor and a bunch of other stuff that's happening under the hood. Doesn't take that long though, so it's pretty neat. So if you generated the app, it's going to look just like we pretty much previewed over on the live site. Only this is local to your Rails and dev environment. So if you want to go back to your root app, you can go here, set a new route in your routes, and it will be the actual route. And then at any time, you can go back to your configuration, check out a page, etc., and view it. So we could check out the views. This little launcher down here I mentioned before, but it's essentially just a quick nav to get back to where you want to go. I did build a little nicer looking routes resource. So if you want to go to Rails UI routes instead of Rails info routes, this is kind of a way to do similar goal, only a little nicer to look at, I would say. So it works just in real time. If you want to type whatever you're doing, you want to copy the path, you just click it and it's all good to go. So it's all similar to what you'd find on Rails info routes, but maybe just nicer on the eyes. When you install any kind of resource, it should automatically append to the nav. So if we do Rails generate scaffold, post, title, string, body, text, it will actually invoke on the Rails UI scaffold generator. It appends to the app here. You refresh the page, you'll want to run the migration, but you'll see posts here now. And one little gotcha here I got to figure out is it needs to be rebundled when you do this. So I just kill the server and restart it. I'll figure that out. I want that to be automatic. But essentially you get the whole scaffold UI based on what you need here. So, you know, if you've done a scaffold in Rails, it's the same thing. It's just actually designed a little more. This is really hard to like design specifically to a specific app because everything's so open-ended. I don't know what resource you're going to generate, but I think it's a little closer to this look and feel of the original app would be. So it's just kind of one of those things. But yeah, so that's a quick how you add a resource on the fly. Other than that, this is all static. So a lot of this stuff is stimulus, HTML, ERB, and then you just kind of go and have some of these UI components be dynamic. And this is just to give you a starting point. I'm not trying to just say this is the way the app is, this is how you should use it, but it is a great place to start, I feel like. So if you were to create a property, I didn't actually build that part yet, but the booking side of it would be to create a booking. You would go to new booking page and do that stuff. So again, this is more if you want to go into depth and see the actual pages. It's in a resource called Page in the View section, and in that page, maybe you have. It's not very, named in the typical way you do Rails, but the stuff's there if you need it to copy and paste into your own app and say a scaffold. So you say you did the post thing, but you are a booking, for instance, you can copy this over, transform some of it into like real ERB, like a select field. You'd probably want to do the form helper stuff. There might be a future where I do that automatically. I don't know how that's going to work, to be honest. So we'll see. But this gives you the foundation, and the UI is the whole point. So calendar, pretty dynamic. I did build this handy little dates range picker that's dynamic in Stimulus.js, and that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. Uses flat picker, I think, under the hood with quite a bit of customization, to be honest. And then, of course, if you want, I thought I installed the Raycast app. There we go. I want to do toggle dark mode by default. This took a lot of time, to be honest. Dark mode is no feat or easy feat. So all this stuff, it's got a dark mode component. If you were to go and change your Tailwind config back to the class orientation, save that down, reboot your app, and then you should be able to switch between these based on your system settings. So if I go to, say, light, but then go back to system, if I toggle back to system appearance, it should go back. Go back to dark, even it honors whatever your user input is. This is on the API thing. You could add this globally if you wanted to. It's just one of those things I included in the API page for a demonstration. I'm going to comment this back and leave it alone for now. Changelog page, help center, as you saw, bookings, insights. This is real JavaScript, Stimulus.js again. Could go and find your properties in the dropdown, date range, and increment counters, all functioning, but actually don't actually hook into the app yet. You would need to actually do some of that logic for yourself. Because this is so niche. I feel like you could take these components and use them in your own stack and figure it out. I think there's only so much I could do before handing that off, I guess you could say. So that's essentially close to it. There's the inbox. This was a fun little component to make. If you type a lot, I'm just going to copy and paste. This actually expands and changes its radius as it does. And it's fixed. So if you were to scroll down, kind of just done for you. Of course, this is all entirely responsive, so I want to make sure it's just done so out of the box. Let me fix that. This particular view is a little more mobile first, so there's actually tab bar on the bottom, stuff like that. It's just built in, and the menu's dynamic. All those little fun bells and whistles. Sign in page, sign up page, all the stuff you saw a little bit earlier. Here's the desktop view, and it should just kind of transcend down all gracefully. This took a lot of time, so I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. There might be a few things I need to update here soon, little things, but I think the gist is pretty close. So I think that's it. Of course, with this, I've also included mailer support. So much like the first theme, you get this out of the box. I did kind of, with Tailwind CSS, you can't quite add that to your emails. It doesn't quite work. It needs to be compiled down. So there's actually a full suite of customizations in CSS in the style sheet, in the style head of the mailer template. So it's kind of opinionated, but not essentially what Tailwind would follow, but it's close to, I think, matching the brand and everything else. All you would really need to do, unless you wanted to change it dramatically, is change your colors to whatever you want here. And these coincide with the theme right now. You would need to update those manually if you want to update that. But included are basic minimal theme, emails, promotion of some sort. Maybe there's an image and a coupon area or something. Secondary buttons, transactional templates. So maybe it's an invoice or something, or a receipt. And then, of course, your devise emails are styled by default. So that comes already set to go, dependent on your theme. If you notice in the HTML ERB, I'm actually using trying to find an example here. I have a custom email action. So it's essentially a button that's rendered as a helper in your emails, and you just essentially enter the action, the name for it, or like a label, and then you can choose a theme as an option there. There's primary and secondary, which is kind of the theme we invoke on the configuration here. So you get those out of the box. So I think that's about it. These are generated dynamically. If you want to get into more of the details of how, if you look here, I've got a custom CSS colors helper method that I've added. Essentially just it generates some RGB numbers based on what I need here, and then Tailwind hooks into those to generate them on the fly. So if you see these in your Tailwind config, that's why. And it allows you to take custom configuration, turn it into RGB format, and spit it out into be your customized Tailwind properties. So all your text classes, body, background classes, all that stuff, get everything from the alpha to, I don't know, all the focus variants and all that stuff comes with it. So it's pretty sweet. I wanted to make that very seamless because I didn't want to just add colors to your primary and then you'd have to go change everything. This is all just in your config and it's done. So that's cool to me. All right, I think that's it. Next up, I'm going to focus on bringing you more themes and probably figuring out what the heck to do with the marketing site. Right now, it's just, hey, subscribe, which has done well. I've gotten quite a few emails from this, so thank you if you've subscribed. Yeah, I'm going to make this more obviously engaging. The themes, I've only got 2 now, but I want to update that to include them all. And show you essentially what's what with the themes, what you get out of the box, the components, all the stuff. As you can see, I haven't updated it yet. Still says Bootstrap, but I'll do that soon. I think the documentation I did update recently, so it'll show less attention to talking about choosing a CSS framework, but you see I need to update screenshots and stuff. So that's on the horizon. Essentially update the marketing site, add more themes, and keep things rolling. So if you've made it to this part of the video and they're still here, thanks for tuning in. And until the next one, I'll try to keep posting more on Twitter. I like to stay really heads down on this if I'm working on it. So like socializing and stuff on Twitter isn't like my forte per se, but screenshots here and there help. And it seems to be a good way to, voice progress. So I'll keep doing that. And if you have any questions or feedback, get at me on Twitter. It's RailsUI and then _. And that's it. All right. So long for now.